The quiet in Room B. The town of Elridge wasn't the kind of place you'd expect much excitement. Tucked between the Blue Ridge Mountains and an aging two-lane highway, it had a diner that still used paper menus, a sheriff who ran unopposed every election, and a library that never updated its hours, even for holidays. Most days passed like fog, soft, uneventful, and quiet. Just how 63-year-old Mabel Hart liked it. Mabel had been the town's head librarian for over 30 years. No one remembered her being hired. She seemed to always be there, dusting the shelves, watering the potted fern near the front desk, and shushing any teenager who dared to whisper above a breath. They called her Silent Mabel. Not because she couldn't speak, she just never bothered. She preferred her silence, her routine, and her books. She was always dressed in shades of gray and brown, like the rest of the building, and always wore a wool shawl that had a faint smell of old paper. Mabel never raised her voice, never smiled, and never shared anything about her past. She was a ghost wrapped in cardigans. And people mocked her for it. The teenagers and the list. Local teens found great joy in teasing Mabel. Every generation passed down the tradition like a rite of passage. They'd steal bookmarks, rearrange books, giggle while tapping keys on the computer catalog, or place fake requests for books with ridiculous titles like How to Communicate with Garden Gnomes. Mabel never chased them. She would simply appear behind them without a sound, her thin figure framed by bookshelves, and hold out her hand until they returned what they took. It unnerved them more than they cared to admit. One teen, Logan Price, kept a running list titled, Top 10 Ways to Get a Reaction Out of Silent Mabel. He was at number 7, play horror sounds from the computer when she's alone. None of the attempts ever worked. Not a smirk. Not a scowl. Just those tired, unreadable eyes behind round spectacles. It was as if she lived in another time, a place far beyond the reach of high school cruelty. A new face in Elridge. But change came the way it always does, slowly, then all at once. It began with a man named Owen Rask, who moved into town and bought the long-abandoned hardware store across from the library. Rumor had it he was from down south, but no one knew where exactly. He was polite, handsome in a tired way, and didn't ask many questions. Just started renovations without much fanfare. People liked him until the break-ins started. First, it was the diner, till drawer emptied. Then a pharmacy truck went missing. A couple days later, someone tried to steal copper wiring from the water plant. Sheriff Carson scratched his head, mumbling about outsiders, but did nothing more than tape off the scenes and file reports. Meanwhile, Owen kept to himself. But Mabel? She noticed. A phone call no one saw. Room B in the back of the library had been locked for years. Most thought it was used for storage or maybe held old town records. One day, after closing time, Logan Price doubled back to retrieve the hoodie he'd left in the reading room. As he passed Room B, he heard a low voice. A voice that sounded like Mabel's. She was speaking clearly, directly, nothing like the soft sighs she sometimes let out when shelving books. No, not yet. Surveillance is still limited. If they go near the substation, I'll make contact. Logan froze. The voice was firm. Official. Almost trained. Then silence. Followed by footsteps. He bolted down the hall and out the emergency exit before Mabel could see him. The next morning, he told his friends. They laughed. Said maybe Mabel was into Dungeons and Dragons or something. But Logan knew what he heard. The man in the brown SUV. That same week, a brown SUV with government plates was seen parked outside the library for 3 hours. No one got out. No one went in. Then it was gone. Mabel resumed her routine. But Logan watched now, really watched. He noticed how she glanced toward every security camera on Main Street when walking home. How she always walked with her left hand curled like muscle memory. How she carried a second phone no one had ever seen her use. She was hiding something. And Logan wanted to know what. The night it all changed. Saturday. 6:41 p.m. 3 men wearing hoodies entered the library just before closing. They weren't from town, no one recognized them. Mabel raised her eyes from the return desk, the corners of her mouth twitching ever so slightly. They asked to use the restroom. Mabel nodded once and gestured. She didn't move when they walked past. Didn't blink when the taller one glanced at the security camera above the entrance. 10 minutes later, Logan, who was across the street at Dino's Pizza, saw the lights go out in the library. He watched as Mabel stepped outside, calmly, no panic in her step. She reached into her cardigan, pulled out a small black device, and pressed a button. 15 seconds later, unmarked black SUVs screeched into the street from both ends. Men in tactical gear flooded into the library. No one in Elridge had ever seen anything like it. And Mabel? She just stood there, arms crossed, watching. Like she'd been waiting years for this moment. The incident report. By Sunday morning, everyone in Elridge had heard about the library incident. The official story, printed in the Elridge Times, claimed that an anonymous federal tip led to the arrest of 3 men wanted in connection with a tri-state robbery ring. No mention of Mabel Hart. No mention of unmarked SUVs. No mention of how one silent librarian had walked calmly out of a darkened building, pressed a button, and summoned an entire tactical team like she was ordering tea. Sheriff Carson's face was redder than usual when he gave the press statement. He kept tugging at his collar and swatting at imaginary flies. A locked library. The library was closed Sunday, which was unusual in itself. Even in snowstorms, Mabel was always there with a shovel and a cup of weak tea in her gloved hand. But on that Sunday, a handwritten sign on the door read, "Closed for inventory. Reopens Monday. M. Hart." Logan stood outside the glass door for 20 minutes. He wasn't reading the sign. He was staring through the glass at room B. Its door was now open. Inside, a metal table and filing cabinets were partially visible. And on the wall? A corkboard, mostly empty except for one photo. He couldn't make out who it was, but something about the posture looked familiar. Questions without answers. At Dino's Pizza, the booth near the window was packed. Logan, Brandy, Malik, and Theo sat with their heads close together, voices hushed. Phones buzzed with theories. Reddit threads about covert ops in small towns were being referenced like sacred scripture. "I swear to God," Logan whispered, "she said something about surveillance and substations. I'm telling you, Mabel Hart is like ex-CIA or something." Brandy snorted. "Mabel? She can barely lift a book." "No," Malik said. "He's not wrong. I saw the video." They all looked at him. Malik scrolled his phone and tapped a shaky screen recording of security footage from the pharmacy across the street. It showed Mabel walking out, calm as a lake. 30 seconds later, SUVs. "She knew," Malik whispered. Theo leaned forward. "That wasn't just some tip from the feds. That was her. She made that call. A letter arrives." On Monday morning, the library reopened. Mabel was behind the desk, exactly as she always had been. Shawl wrapped tight, eyes steady, not a trace of drama. Like nothing had happened at all. When Logan walked in, she looked up and nodded once. But on his way to the fiction section, she slid a sealed envelope across the desk in his direction. She said nothing. He stared at it. "Open this where no one's watching." That's all it said on the outside. Heart pounding, Logan stuffed it into his jacket and pretended to browse. His hands were shaking. Contents of the envelope. The letter inside wasn't typed. It was written in precise, slanted handwriting. The kind you'd expect from a schoolteacher in the 1940s. It read, "Logan Price. You're not as clever as you think, but you're not stupid either. You heard me that night. You saw what happened. So let me be clear. There are things at work here that you don't understand. Things you shouldn't understand. But you're curious. And you're careful. That combination can be dangerous. So I'll offer you a choice. A. Stay out of it. Forget what you think you saw. B. Come back tomorrow at 6 p.m. Room B alone. If you choose B, understand this, once you hear what I have to say, there's no going back. M.H. Logan read it twice, then a third time. His palms were sweating. Room B. The room no one had entered in years. The dilemma. All day he sat through school like a sleepwalker. Brandy noticed something was off. You okay? She asked during lunch. Yeah, Logan said. Just tired. But his mind wasn't on cafeteria food or history quizzes. It was on Mabel Hart. And what exactly she was hiding behind those quiet eyes and that musty cardigan. That evening, as the clock ticked toward 6 o'clock, Logan stood in front of the library doors, heart hammering. A storm had rolled in. Thunder cracked overhead. Rain slicked the streets. Elridge looked like a ghost town. He stepped inside. Room B. She was waiting. The door to Room B was open. The lights were dim. Inside, Mabel stood by a filing cabinet, holding a steaming mug. The room smelled faintly of lavender and ozone. Without looking at him, she said, "Close the door." He obeyed. "Sit." He sat. For a few seconds, there was only the sound of the storm outside, wind brushing against the old glass panes. "I suppose," she said, turning slowly, "you want to know what happened Saturday night." He nodded. "Then I need to tell you about Elridge. And why I came back. The war you never heard about. I wasn't always Mabel Hart," she said quietly. "In fact, I haven't been her for very long." Logan blinked. She walked to the corkboard and pulled a photo from it. It was faded, an old black and white image of a much younger Mabel, maybe in her 20s, dressed in desert gear, standing beside a wrecked vehicle with two others. She was holding something in her hand. A radio. This was Kandahar. 1998, we were interceptors, signal division. Covert. You were in the military? Logan asked. She smiled faintly. Something like that. We handled signals that weren't meant to exist. And enemies that didn't officially exist. But, you're a librarian. I'm many things, she said. But above all, I'm someone who never liked bullies. The librarian's other life. Mabel's voice was calm, but it had an edge now, something precise and weathered by long use, like a scalpel that hadn't dulled over time. I didn't ask to come back here, she said. But sometimes the ghosts we outrun decide they've had enough waiting. Logan sat frozen in the cracked vinyl chair of Room B. The storm still rumbled outside, but the silence in this room carried more weight than thunder. You were in the military? He asked, still staring at the old photo she'd handed him. No. I was part of an operations wing that didn't officially exist. We called ourselves Echo Division. We handled radio intercepts, signal theft, deep code surveillance. But eventually, our work crossed into something uglier. Mabel turned her gaze toward a small file drawer, her fingers hesitating before opening it. The binder. From the drawer, she pulled out a binder. It was thick, labeled simply, E13, Elridge Protocol. She placed it on the desk between them, then slid it toward Logan. He didn't open it. Not yet. I was sent here first in 1993, she said. Elridge was one of 5 towns used as control zones, places where we could track anomalous activity without drawing attention. Anomalous? She nodded. Cell signals, encrypted channels, radio bursts at illegal frequencies. A lot of it came from what we believed were domestic terror cells testing communication tools. But in Elridge, it was different. She leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. There were no transmitters. No power sources. And no signals, until someone moved into town. The arrival. A man named Gareth Rask arrived in '93. Bought an old warehouse. Started a repair business, which was a cover. Wait, Logan interrupted. Rask? Like Owen Rask? Her eyes flickered. Yes. Same family. Gareth was Owen's uncle. The man currently across the street? That's not a coincidence. Mabel stood and walked to a dusty filing cabinet. She opened the middle drawer and pulled out a thin, manila envelope. Inside, a photo of a younger Gareth Rask, lean, intense, ice-cold and calculating. We suspected Gareth was building a communications hub, something experimental, maybe even prototype technology smuggled out of Eastern Europe. But before we could confirm it, Echo Division was dissolved. Why? Because we got too close. And someone didn't want us to keep looking. The shutdown. She moved to the far corner of the room and lifted a faded tarp. Underneath was a locked metal box the size of a small safe. She opened it with a 6-digit code. Inside were microcassettes, a pair of earpieces, and a handgun. Logan stared at the weapon. I haven't fired that in years, she said. But I kept it for this. What is this? Logan asked, his voice dry. What's happening now? Mabel pulled a single microcassette labeled E13 Burst 22 and inserted it into a compact player. Listen. She pressed play. The signal. What came through was not speech. Not exactly. It was a warbling distortion, metallic but rhythmic. Every 5 seconds, there was a pulse like a sonar ping wrapped in static. Then a pause. And then a single voice, crackling through. Subject online. Reintegration incomplete. Await contact. Logan looked up sharply. What is that? That was recorded from the substation down by Old Mill Road last week. There hasn't been a signal from that place in 20 years. He sat back. You think Owen Rask is trying to finish what Gareth started? Mabel shook her head. No. I think he's already finished it. The pattern. She walked back to the desk and opened the binder. Inside were maps of Elridge, marked with color-coded dots, red for incidents, green for signal bursts, blue for disappearances. A dense cluster sat right on Main Street. The epicenter? The library. You're standing in the only place that's ever disrupted their transmissions, she said. This building was wired with inhibitors back in 1995. No one ever knew because the tech was classified and buried under a fake renovation order. Logan blinked. You're telling me the library is some kind of signal weapon? In a way, Mabel replied. It's also why they want me out. They? Whatever Gareth passed down to Owen. The network. The ones who built this. A cold truth. Logan's heart thudded in his chest. It was hard to know what to believe, but her words rang with the kind of clarity that couldn't be faked. So what do you want from me? He finally asked. Mabel folded her hands, resting them on the binder. You're already involved, Logan. You just haven't realized how deep it goes. She looked at him, eyes steady, voice low. That night you heard me in this room? I wasn't talking to myself. I was monitoring a burst from Rask's property. I tracked the signal path. And it was triangulated across 3 devices. One from the hardware store. One from the tower by the reservoir. And one from your high school. Logan's mouth went dry. My school? She nodded. Whatever they're building, it's already inside. And you may be the only one I can get close enough to stop it. No going back. The storm outside intensified. Rain hit the windows like fingers tapping Morse code. Somewhere distant, a tree cracked and groaned in the wind. Mabel stood. You can walk out of here, she said. Pretend none of this happened. Throw that letter away, forget this room, forget the signal. Or... She walked to the desk, pulled out a plain gray badge, and laid it down beside him. You can help me finish what I started. Logan looked at the badge. It had no name. No number. Just a silver circle etched into the surface. It pulsed faintly in the light. The air felt heavier now, like the weight of an invisible thread had just looped around his chest. He didn't speak. He just stared at it. The badge. Logan didn't touch the badge right away. The silence between them stretched, brittle and humming with tension. It wasn't just the weight of what Mabel had said, it was the way she said it. As if truth had a certain gravity to it, and once spoken, there was no taking it back. Mabel stood motionless, waiting. The silver badge on the desk gleamed under the dim ceiling bulb, etched with that strange, hypnotic circle. The light seemed to bend subtly around it, as though the metal wasn't reflecting light, it was absorbing it. He finally whispered, "What is this?" Mabel's lips thinned. "It's a key. And a curse." Logan hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached forward and picked it up. It was cold. He felt a faint vibration run up his arm the moment it touched his skin, as though the badge recognized him. Mabel watched him carefully. "You're one of us now." Logan's secret begins. At home, Logan didn't speak a word during dinner. He nodded when his mom asked about school, stirred his mashed potatoes like they were made of lead, and kept one hand in his jacket pocket where the badge now sat wrapped in a sock, hidden even from the table lamp's glow. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Mabel's face, not the one she wore during story hour or when scolding teens for noise, but the version he saw in Room B. The woman who could summon federal strike teams, pull cassette tapes from the 1990s, and speak of encrypted radio waves with surgical precision. Everything he thought he knew about his town, about his life, was cracking. And then there was the map. The one in her binder, filled with dots. Why was the school on it? The hidden locker. The next morning, Logan arrived at school an hour early. The sky was still dark, and the janitor gave him a curious glance as he walked in, but said nothing. Logan moved quickly down the second-floor hallway to the lockers outside the unused AV room. The hall was always cold here. The kind of cold that wasn't just about temperature, it felt off. He remembered what Mabel had said, 3 sources. Rask's shop, the reservoir tower, and your school. He opened his own locker first, nothing out of the ordinary. Books, notebook, earbuds. Then he moved to the old faculty locker near the end of the hall. It hadn't been assigned in years. The door was slightly misaligned, the paint flaking. He pressed his ear to it. A low hum. Faint, rhythmic. Like a pulse. Logan glanced around, then knelt down. At the base, where the metal met the floor, there was a thin line of dust, disturbed in a small semicircle. Something had been opened recently. He reached out to touch the handle. "Mr. Price?" He froze. Detention. Vice Principal Gurney stood at the other end of the hallway, arms crossed, keys jangling. "I asked what you're doing." Logan forced a swallow. "Just looking for my binder. Thought I might have dropped it." "Locker area's off limits before 7:30, Gurney said. "You know that." "Yes, sir." Gurney narrowed his eyes, then looked at the locker Logan had just touched. He paused for a second too long. Then he said, "Come with me." You've just earned yourself detention. Mabel's warning. That afternoon, Logan returned to the library after school. The rain had stopped, but the wind hadn't. The air felt like it had something to say, but didn't know how to speak. Mabel was filing old returns behind the desk when he came in. Without looking up, she said, "Did you check it?" "I tried. Someone caught me." She did look up then. "Who?" "Vice Principal Gurney." Her mouth drew into a thin, troubled line. "I should have guessed," she said softly. "You think he's part of it?" "I think he's not just monitoring students," she replied. "I think he's acting as a signal anchor." "A what?" She leaned in close. "Some humans, rare ones, can act as biological beacons. They can absorb and relay low-frequency signal bursts without devices. It's a genetic trait. Very useful. Very dangerous." Logan's stomach tightened. That's why the locker was humming. She nodded. "You said there were 3 points in the signal triangle," Logan said. "Rask's shop, the tower, and my school. What if someone moved the hub? What if the school is now the new epicenter?" Mabel's eyes gleamed. "Then they're closer to completion than I feared." The old blueprint. From room B, Mabel retrieved a long-forgotten blueprint rolled in a cardboard tube. She laid it out across the reading room table. Dust scattered like pollen. It showed the library, the school, the substation, and the old hardware store. "What are we looking at?" Logan asked. "This," she said, pointing to the thin blue lines running between the buildings, "is a fiberless signal mesh. It's a closed system that allows data to transmit without detectable energy emissions. Whoever built this, whoever is maintaining it, is using these 3 structures to mask a larger operation." "Larger?" She turned to him, dead serious. "They're building a ghost net." "Ghost net." "It's a phrase we used in Echo Division," she explained. "A ghost net is an off-grid network that communicates through ambient energy fields, thermal, magnetic, even electrical pulses in the ground. It leaves no digital footprint. No IP logs. It's invisible to standard surveillance." "And what does it do?" Logan asked. "Depends who's controlling it." In 1998, one was used to coordinate a black market auction of military tech in Istanbul. In 2003, another disrupted water treatment facilities across 6 states. She paused. And in 2009, one was used to erase the identities of 42 intelligence officers across 3 continents. Logan's voice was small. "You think they're trying to use it here?" "I think they're already testing it," she said. "And your school is the transmission point. The stakeout." That night, Logan didn't go home. With Mabel's help, he snuck out through the library's side entrance and crouched behind the bushes across from Rask's hardware store. Owen Rask worked late. Lights stayed on well past 10 p.m. He moved strangely, never talking on the phone, always working on something electrical, never seeming to notice time passing. But at 10:41 p.m., something changed. The streetlights flickered. The temperature dropped. A low hum passed through the ground, barely audible, but present. Logan looked at Mabel. She didn't speak. She was already pulling something from her coat pocket. A small, cylindrical device the size of a matchbox. She twisted it. And suddenly, the humming stopped. The lights returned to normal. Rask looked up sharply. And directly at them. The man across the street. Owen Rask stood inside the glowing storefront of his hardware shop, staring directly at the 2 figures crouched in the bushes. His eyes didn't blink. He didn't move. It was as though he'd sensed the exact moment the signal was interrupted. Logan's breath caught in his throat. Mabel slowly lowered the cylindrical device in her hand, her eyes locked with Rask's. She said nothing, but Logan noticed her body stiffen, her posture change, not fearful, but prepared. Like she'd just seen a ghost wearing human skin. And then Rask smiled. It wasn't a natural smile. It didn't quite reach his eyes. It was slow, deliberate, and so cold it felt like it had been practiced in a mirror 1,000 times. Then he turned away. The front lights of the store dimmed, and the blinds were drawn shut. Mabel exhaled. He knows. Retaliation. The next morning, Logan woke to a police cruiser parked across the street from his house. 2 officers stood by the driver's side, speaking to his mother. When he came outside, still half-dressed, they turned toward him. "Logan Price," one of them asked. "Yeah?" "You're being brought in for questioning. Regarding trespassing and suspected vandalism of school property." "What?" His mom turned to him, furious and confused. "Logan, what's going on?" But Logan had no answer. His heart pounded as the officer pulled out a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a tool one he'd never seen before. A slim metal cylinder with a rubber grip, exactly like the one Mabel had used the night before. "This was found in a locker this morning," the officer said. "Yours?" Questioned. The interrogation room at the sheriff's office wasn't much more than a converted closet. Logan sat under a buzzing fluorescent light, his palms sweaty, his knee bouncing uncontrollably. Across from him sat Deputy Faulkner, a man with a long face and an equally long record of staring silently before speaking. "You want to tell me," Faulkner finally said, "what this device is?" "I don't know," Logan answered. "Funny. It was found in your locker. I didn't put it there." "You saying someone framed you?" Logan swallowed. "Yeah. I think so." "Why?" That one stuck in his throat. "Because I'm working with the town librarian to stop a Black Ops ghost net being activated under our noses?" Faulkner raised an eyebrow, waiting. Before Logan could speak, the door opened. Sheriff Carson stepped in, face unreadable. He held up a phone. "You've got a call." "Who from?" Carson frowned. "Some woman named Mabel Hart." Release. 10 minutes later, Logan was outside the station. No charges filed. No further questions. His mother was waiting by the curb in her old minivan, red-faced with confusion and anger. But before she could launch into a storm of questions, Mabel appeared. From the alley. From the shadows. Like always. "Go home," she said to Logan's mom, calmly but firmly. "He's coming with me. You'll thank me later." And somehow, unbelievably, his mom didn't argue. Logan slipped into the back seat of Mabel's ancient Buick without a word. Damage control. Back at the library, Mabel locked the doors and flipped the closed sign. She didn't even look at him until they reached room B. "That tool was mine," she said. But it was clean. No prints, no residue, no trace. "If it was found in your locker, someone placed it there deliberately." "You think it was Gurney?" Logan asked. "No. Gurney doesn't make moves. He obeys orders." "Then Rask?" Mabel shook her head. "Too direct. He's smarter than that. If Rask is running this operation, he won't show his hand unless forced." She turned on a screen and pulled up a digital map of Elridge. "Someone is trying to isolate you, Logan. Make you panic. Make you disappear. What do? We fight fire with silence. Counter signal." She explained her plan slowly, methodically, as if laying out instructions for defusing a bomb. "We need to track the next burst from the ghost net. But doing so will trigger a reactive pulse like sonar. If we're exposed, we'll be triangulated and compromised." "What does that mean?" "It means someone might come for us. She reached under the desk and produced a hard plastic briefcase. Inside, a folding antenna, a wireless intercept tablet, and what looked like a signal suppressor patch the size of a coaster. "Tonight," she said, "we go to the reservoir." "Why there?" "Because that's the only node we haven't disrupted. And if we don't stop the flow." She looked at him, voice low. "Then what's coming won't be a signal. It'll be something worse. The reservoir." At 11:42 p.m., they arrived at the chain-link fence surrounding the old reservoir tower. The place had been offline for years, decommissioned after the town switched to county supply. But the tower still loomed like a skeleton, tall and rusted, wires hanging like veins. Mabel disabled the padlock in 5 seconds flat. "How do you know how to do all this?" Logan asked. "I spent 20 years learning how to take apart the world," she answered. "And another 10 trying to forget." They climbed the access ladder slowly, quietly. At the top, beneath the dark open sky, Mabel deployed the antenna and secured the intercept patch to the steel platform. Then she pulled out a thin earpiece and handed it to Logan. "Ready?" "No," he whispered. "But do it anyway." The ping. She activated the device. For 5 seconds, there was nothing. Then a ripple of vibration moved through the steel beneath their feet. Then, a tone. Warbled. Muted. Then sharpened. And a voice. "Beacon 3 online. Transfer key engaged. Aligning node. Tower integrity stable. Prepare for extraction window." Logan's heart skipped. "What does it mean?" Mabel's face was pale. "It means they're opening a channel. A wide one." "To who?" "I don't know." But then the voice changed. It wasn't mechanical anymore. It was human. Familiar. It was Owen Rask. "You should have stayed quiet, Mabel. We were going to let you fade. But you couldn't help yourself." Logan looked at her. Mabel stared into the dark. Then she pulled out her radio and simply said, "Code Black. They've activated the spine." And the night began to scream. Code Black. The tower shuddered. Not with movement, but with sound. A low-frequency hum pulsed through the steel platform beneath their feet, deep enough to rattle teeth, low enough to make Logan's vision blur at the edges. The voice, Rask's voice, was gone now, replaced by a pulsing distortion like a heartbeat made of static. Mabel didn't hesitate. She grabbed the briefcase, shoved the antenna inside, and turned to Logan. "Down. Now." They scrambled down the ladder as the hum grew louder. Lights blinked to life along the reservoir's base, hidden motion sensors revealing themselves in sharp blue bursts. Logan had never seen this tower lit up before. No one had. By the time their feet hit gravel, a new sound joined the symphony. A siren. But not from the town. This one came from beneath them. Underground. Logan stared at Mabel as she led him around the back of the tower, ducking into a narrow service tunnel with a rusted gate. She punched in a 6-digit code, and the lock clicked open. "You knew this was here?" he asked, panting. Mabel didn't answer. She was already moving. The tunnel descended steeply, narrow and old, with water dripping in rhythmic patterns that matched the pulse from the tower. "What did Rask mean?" Logan gasped as they ran. "They've activated the spine?" Mabel flicked on a flashlight and turned to him for a half-second. In GhostNet architecture, the spine is the core frequency pathway, the central nervous system. Once activated, it starts transmitting continuously. Untraceable. Self-replicating. And that's bad? She stopped short. It means the network is now alive. And if we don't shut it down soon, it will spread beyond Elridge. Spread where? Everywhere. A new room B. At the bottom of the tunnel was a blast door sealed with a palm scanner. Mabel laid her hand on the pad. It beeped. Unlocked. Logan stepped into what looked like a miniature version of Room B, but colder, cleaner, and humming with faint machinery. 3 screens blinked to life. This was a listening post. Not just old analog equipment like in the library, but something far more modern. Sleek. Military grade. Logan stared. You built this? No, she said. Echo Division did. In 1995. But they dissolved. She gave him a long look. Some of us stayed active. We were ghosts already, easy to keep buried. She tapped one screen. A topographic grid appeared with moving light pulses crisscrossing Main Street. That's the net, she said. It's already embedded. Every traffic light, every phone pole, every HVAC system, if it transmits a signal, it's been compromised. First breach. On the center monitor, a flashing red dot appeared. Node 3 breach integrity 14%. Source, Elridge High AV room server. They're boosting the spine through the school's old audio server, she said. I was there, Logan murmured. I heard it hum. We need to get back inside. Tonight. He stared at her. That's impossible. There's security, motion sensors. I'll get you in, she said. But first, I need to show you what we're up against. She walked to a locked cabinet and opened it. Inside was a manila folder labeled Echo File, Rask. Who is Owen Rask? She laid the photos on the table one by one. A satellite photo of a facility in Venezuela. A blurry image of Owen with 2 other men, all wearing identical black gloves. A document from a NATO intelligence intercept with the phrase, Rask is a synthetic node. What does that mean? Logan asked. Mabel's voice went quiet. We believe Owen Rask isn't entirely human. Logan blinked. What? He was born naturally, yes. But in the early 2000s, he disappeared for 5 years. When he resurfaced, his biometric scans showed anomalies, metallic residue in neural tissue, abnormal cell regrowth. He's not a robot. But something was done to him. He became a transmitter. Logan felt the cold sink into his skin. He's the signal? He's the spine's first carrier, Mabel said. And that makes him dangerous. The fire test. On the side screen, a new signal burst appeared. Signal 12, live transmission, Main Street grid. Mabel leaned in. They're testing. Watch. She toggled the view to a live traffic camera. At that moment, across Elridge, 4 streetlights flickered in perfect sequence. Then, the crosswalk signs blinked faster than normal. Then, all at once, an electrical box on the corner of Main and Alder sparked and burst into flame. Logan jumped. They're using the grid, Mabel said. They're testing its range, what it can ignite, short-circuit, or disable. But why? Imagine this, Logan, no one attacks. No one breaks down doors. No bombs. No guns. Just the infrastructure failing. Lights turning on at 3 a.m. security systems shutting off. Water turning toxic. And the only signal they ever detect? She tapped the screen. That slow, perfect pulse. The call. A sound buzzed from a drawer. Mabel pulled out a flip phone, the kind you could destroy with a boot heel and leave no trace. She flipped it open, listened for a second, and said, Understood. Confirming integrity of Node 3. Extraction pending. She closed it. Logan stared. Who was that? A very old friend. She turned to him. I have to stay here and monitor the transmission. But you're going back into that school. Alone? No. You'll have help. But not from me. Then who? She reached into a metal cabinet and pulled out a sealed black envelope. Inside, a school visitor's badge. And a name tag. Substitute, M. Whitaker. The plan. You'll go in as a substitute, she said. There's a faculty badge embedded with a signal scrambler. It'll keep you off security logs. Once inside, you'll go to the AV room. Slide your phone into the port labeled AUXCOM3. It'll trigger a hidden uplink. From there, I'll trace the path and begin the severance. Logan stared at her like she'd grown a second head. Why me? Because you're already in their system. You're a known anomaly. If you don't show up, they'll know something's wrong. He swallowed hard. What if I screw up? Mabel stepped forward, placed a hand on his shoulder. You won't. The final word. Before they left the underground room, Mabel handed him a second item, a tiny silver coin on a string. The same circle etched into the badge now rested on the coin's surface. Wear this, she said. It'll block low-wave influence. But only for 20 minutes at a time. Influence? You ever have a thought in your head that didn't feel like yours? That wasn't anxiety or fear, but something else? He nodded slowly. It's not always your imagination. She turned toward the console. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., the game begins. You step into that school. I'll be watching. And with that, Logan was no longer just a curious teenager. He was a player in a war that no one else even knew had begun. Into the lion's den. Monday morning arrived like a wave crashing through Logan's chest. He hadn't slept. Not really. At 6:55 a.m., he stood outside Elridge High's main doors in a collared shirt and khakis that didn't quite fit, a poor attempt at looking like an adult substitute teacher. The visitor's badge Mabel gave him was clipped to his pocket. It looked normal, cheap plastic, printed name. But the moment he stepped past the lobby's RFID scanner, it did something strange. The scanner lights blinked red. Then flickered blue. Then went dark. Just like Mabel said. The scrambler worked. He was invisible to the digital logs now. But not to the eyes that mattered. Familiar halls, new eyes. Logan walked the halls as if for the first time. Every door, every light switch, every hallway camera now felt like part of a system. Not safety features, but surveillance limbs. He passed his own locker, clean, untouched since the arrest. His name still written inside in faded black Sharpie. A lifetime ago. And then he saw Vice Principal Gurney. Standing at the end of the hall, arms crossed, speaking quietly to a custodian. Their eyes met. Logan nodded politely, just another adult in the building. Gurney stared a beat too long. Then gave a shallow nod and walked away. It sent a chill down Logan's spine. The visitor in room 209. Room 209 was the AV room. Logan knocked once. No answer. He opened the door. The room was dim, even with lights on. Old media equipment lined the walls, VCRs, mixers, DVD towers collecting dust like ancient ruins. He walked to the instructor's desk and sat. Pulled out his phone. Found the port labeled AUXCOM3 hidden behind a fake paper tray. He slid the cord into his headphone jack and waited. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the classroom screen flickered on. Mabel's message. Mabel's voice, distorted but clear, came through the speaker overhead. You did it. Link is live. Do not remove the device. Then the screen lit up. It showed a schematic of the ghost net's frequency pattern. Logan watched as a new red dot blinked, his location. The uplink had been confirmed. Then the display changed, showing another live feed. Mabel's face appeared. She was somewhere dark, probably still in the underground post. Her expression was calm, but urgent. You've activated the last node. Now we wait. Logan stared. Wait for what? To see who takes the bait. Surveillance. Back in the hallway, Gurney stood at the security kiosk. He watched the hallway monitors like a hawk, eyes narrowing as room 209 flickered on his screen. One hand hovered over the call button for the principal's office. The other tapped twice on the console, subtly. A signal. Far away, in the hardware shop, a small green LED lit up beneath Owen Rask's desk. He smiled. And stood. A visitor for Logan. 10 minutes passed. The screen showed shifting waves and static pulses. Mabel narrated in calm, clinical tones. They've altered the frequency bands, jumping between electromagnetic resonance and ground signal conductivity. It's hybrid. Crude, but effective. What does that mean? It means they're using physical structures now. The very materials in the walls, metal frames, copper wiring, to move the signal. Suddenly, the classroom door creaked open. Logan spun in his chair. A girl stood there, junior class, maybe. Black hoodie. Soft curls. Nervous smile. Are you the sub? Logan blinked. Yeah. They told me to come get you. Mr. Gurney wants to talk to you. Logan's heart dropped. Did he say why? She shrugged. Nope. Just said to bring you. Now. The detour. Mabel's voice whispered through the earpiece, still in Logan's shirt collar. Logan, do not go with her. He stared at the girl, heart pounding. She seemed normal. But something in her tone was off. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Ask her what the school motto is, Mabel said. Logan cleared his throat. Hey, quick question, what's the school motto again? I always forget. The girl's brow furrowed. She hesitated. Too long. Go Eagles? Wrong. That was the mascot chant. Not the motto. The real motto, courage through curiosity, was carved into the stone above the main entrance. She wasn't a student. Run. Logan stood abruptly. Tell Mr. Gurney I'll be there in 5. She blinked. He said now. I'm not leaving until the bell rings, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. He turned back to the screen, faking disinterest. The girl hesitated. Then walked away. Mabel's voice returned, firm now. She's not with the school. That was a probe. What kind of probe? Human delivery. They're testing how much access they have, how far the influence has spread. Logan's voice trembled. You mean, she was under control? Or she's part of it willingly? Either way, you need to get out. They know you're here. Escape route. Logan pulled the phone jack from the port. The screen went dark. He slipped out of room 209 and into the hallway, which was now unsettlingly empty. No students. No Gurney. The school felt staged. Mabel's voice buzzed in his ear. Exit through the East Wing maintenance corridor. Use the boiler room door. Logan broke into a jog, avoiding the main intersections. Behind him, a door slammed open. Hey, a voice barked. Not a teacher's voice. He didn't look back. He reached the boiler room and shoved through the emergency door just as someone shouted again behind him. The alley behind the school was empty. Except for one vehicle. A car idling. Windows tinted. The back door opened. Mabel was inside. Extraction. Logan dove into the back seat and the car peeled out. Mabel wore sunglasses and gloves. Her lips were pressed tight. "That was fast," he gasped. "We had less time than I thought." "Who was she?" "The girl?" "She wasn't a girl," Mabel said softly. "She was a tether." "A what?" "A human carrier. Someone biologically altered to interface directly with the GhostNet." Logan's stomach turned. "So she's not who she was anymore." They drove in silence for several blocks before Mabel finally spoke again. "I need to show you one last thing. Then we go dark. No more school. No more town. Not until we're ready to shut this down." "What are you showing me?" She reached into her coat pocket and handed him a photograph. It was of a building. Not in Elridge, but familiar somehow. On the back, a handwritten note read, "Where it all began. Where it all began." The drive took nearly 2 hours. Mabel said nothing the entire way. Logan sat in the passenger seat of the old Buick, staring out at pine trees and forgotten farmhouses as the road unraveled beneath them. The photograph she'd handed him stayed gripped in his fingers, corners damp with sweat. A low-slung brick building stood in the image, windows blacked out, fencing rusting under years of neglect. It looked abandoned. On the back, those 4 words still echoed in his mind. "Where it all began." "Where is this?" Logan finally asked. Mabel responded without looking at him. "A training facility in East Hollow. Echo Division used it for orientation, simulation, and indoctrination." "Indoctrination?" She exhaled through her nose. "We weren't trained like soldiers. We were reprogrammed like weapons." East Hollow. When they finally pulled into the gravel lot outside the facility, the place looked worse than in the photo. The perimeter fence had collapsed in spots. The weeds grew waist-high. No birds sang here. The air hung heavy, still, like a stage waiting for its actors to return. Logan stepped out of the car and stared at the building. "Why are we here?" he asked. "Because this is the only place they can't listen." She opened the trunk and retrieved a thick, black duffel bag. Inside, a portable EM jammer, thermal scanner, and something that looked like a handheld mine detector. "Signal void?" Logan guessed. She nodded. The structure was built with copper-inlaid walls. Nothing gets in or out without a hardline. No Wi-Fi. No cellular. Nothing. She held the door open for him. "Which means we can talk freely." The mission files. Inside, the facility smelled of mold and metal. The walls were lined with peeling posters about signal discipline and mind/machine harmony. It felt like a Cold War museum built for ghosts. They entered a narrow hallway with a flickering overhead light. At the far end, a vault-like room labeled "Classified, Eyes Only." Mabel pulled a brass key from around her neck and unlocked it. Inside was a filing cabinet, a dusty table, and 2 chairs. She sat. Logan followed. Then she slid a folder across to him. Project Hollow Eye. The real story of Echo Division. Echo Division was never just about signal intercepts, Mabel said quietly. We were also testing neural relays, ways to transmit command signals through human minds. Logan's stomach turned. "You mean, like brainwashing?" "More like hijacking," she said. Low-frequency pulses that could insert a command into someone's subconscious. It wouldn't control them completely, but it could nudge behavior. Interrupt decisions. Amplify paranoia. He flipped through the folder, black and white photos of test subjects, pages with long blocks of redacted text, diagrams of skulls and signal coils. They experimented on their own agents, he asked. She looked at him. I was agent number 17. The cost. She pulled back the sleeve of her cardigan. A scar ran from her wrist to her elbow, faint, but unmistakable. Surgical. They implanted the receiver here, she said. Said it would help me hear through walls. What it did was nearly cost me my mind. She stood and paced slowly. Echo Division thought they were building weapons. But they were just playing with fire. One by one, our unit fractured. People disappeared. Some, like Gareth Rask, went rogue. And Owen? Logan asked. She nodded slowly. A legacy asset. The result of decades of experimentation. Built from the wreckage we left behind. She turned to him. And now he's finishing what we started. The real plan. Rask isn't just trying to expand the net, she said. He's using it to map behavior. Every action taken by someone in the network, every blink, every pause before speaking, it's cataloged. For what? For replication. She pulled out a blueprint of the town, one different from the last. This one showed layers beneath the buildings. Long, winding lines labeled neural routing and decision tree triggers. They're not just watching Elridge. They're rehearsing it. Logan felt like the room was spinning. You mean like, building a copy? Exactly. A simulation. Digital. A world where everyone in town is reduced to inputs. And then what? She stared at him, voice flat. Then they run the future. Parallel Elridge. Mabel handed him a tablet and pressed play on a short video. A 3D rendering appeared on screen, a digital town, eerily identical to Elridge. Buildings in the same places. Street names the same. Even the flicker of the broken diner sign was animated in pixel-perfect detail. Small digital figures moved along the streets, repeating behaviors, checking phones, talking, crossing the street. One of the avatars stopped outside the library. It turned. Stared at the camera. It had Mabel's face. Jesus, Logan whispered. This is a training loop, she said. They run thousands per hour. Each one simulates how Elridge would react to specific events, a riot, a blackout, a message leak. They're finding the perfect outcome before it happens. You mean they're going to try one for real? They already are. The precursor event. She opened another folder. 2 days from now, there will be a citywide test. Branded as a scheduled signal upgrade. It'll trigger a full sync of the GhostNet. Once that happens, they'll inject the first active command set. Logan's hands shook. What kind of command? We don't know. That's the point. No one will know. They'll feel it like intuition. Like waking up and deciding to act on a thought they didn't recognize. He stood and began pacing. We have to stop this. She nodded. And we will. But first. She pulled out a cassette tape. Not a file. Not a screen. A cassette. This is your father. The voice from the past. Logan froze. What? She held the tape out gently. His name was Agent Michael Price. Echo Division. Clearance Tier 3. Logan slowly reached for it, hands trembling. I didn't know him. You will. She handed him an old tape recorder and pressed play. The voice that came through was warm. Thoughtful. Calm. If you're hearing this, then the net has activated. And the world you knew is changing. You've been chosen not because you're strong, but because you notice. Because you see the seams others don't. If you're my son. I want you to know I never wanted this for you. But sometimes the only way to stop a fire is to burn back. The tape clicked. Silence. Logan sat down hard. The choice. Mabel knelt beside him. You don't have to go further. I'll finish this. You walk away now, you stay safe. But Logan looked up, eyes wet but clear. No. He placed the tape in his coat pocket. I'm in. The dry run. By Tuesday morning, Elridge buzzed with the subtle unease of people sensing something was wrong, though no one could say exactly what. Traffic lights flickered a little too fast. Security alarms chirped once at random, then stopped. The digital gas pump at Hal's station showed prices from 3 days ago. The air itself seemed laced with static, like the town was holding its breath. Mabel stood in the library's upstairs window with binoculars, watching Main Street. They're running the dry test, she said. No major disruptions, just latency injection, desync pulses, and decision delays. English? Logan asked. They're messing with timing. Introducing microscopic delays between cause and effect to see how the town reacts. He frowned. That's evil. It's precise, she replied. And it's escalating. The simulation. Back in Room B, Mabel showed Logan the live tracking interface. Digital avatars of Elridge's residents moved across the simulated town grid. Each name was replaced by a code, JX43, AL17, PR99, but Mabel recognized the patterns. See here, she pointed. That's Sheriff Carson's loop. He always grabs coffee at 8:03, talks to Hal for 2 minutes, then hits the station. Watch. Logan watched the loop. At 8:03, the avatar paused outside the coffee shop. But it never went in. It stood there. Frozen. What happened? They're rewriting his pattern. Seeing what variables emerge when an authority figure hesitates. You mean, they're testing his collapse point? She nodded. And they'll do the same to everyone. The upload point. We've narrowed it down, Mabel said. The main upload point is inside Owen Rask's shop. A sub-basement. Shielded with synthetic ceramic plating. Logan raised an eyebrow. You can see through ceramic now? Not directly, she said. But I can track the thermal bloom from its processors when it runs. She tapped a monitor showing live thermal data. A red blotch glowed under the building like a pulse beneath skin. Rask's running a hub the size of a nuclear suitcase, she said. But it's got one flaw, it overheats. And that's our opening? She gave him a faint smile. Exactly. The distraction. Mabel laid out the plan in careful beats. Logan would return to the school at lunch, using a fake excuse and badge to re-enter room 209. There, he'd run a false command through the old audio server, triggering a simulated override that would scramble Rask's node alignment. While Rask investigated the anomaly, Mabel would breach the hardware shop's sub-basement, plant a kinetic EMP spike, and detonate it, wiping the spine's core logic. Logan blinked. That sounds dangerous. She nodded. It is. And illegal. She didn't deny that either. But if we don't do this, they'll move to phase 2. And then every town like Elridge will become a test bed for behavioral programming. Return to the school. At 12:18 p.m., Logan slipped into Elridge High under the guise of forgotten materials. His forged visitor pass, this one labeled District Compliance Observer, let him bypass front office scrutiny. He walked calmly through the halls, the echoes of lockers and sneakers and fluorescent hums oddly soothing after the chaos of the past week. Inside room 209, he moved quickly. Mabel had given him a flash drive. He inserted it into AUX COM 3 and waited. The screen lit up. Simulation command, false trigger upload initiated. Scramble sequence, spine reflection mode. The words meant little to him, but the result was immediate. Across town, in Rask's shop, a small warning chime sounded. And the LED display on the sub-basement node blinked. Error, sequence loop breach. Potential reflection path engaged. Rask reacts. Owen Rask looked up from his workbench. The console blinked, and for the first time in weeks, his expression cracked. Impossible, he whispered. He moved swiftly, unlocking the concealed panel in the floor and dropping down into the sublevel. Below, the temperature was already rising. He keyed in the override code. But the system wouldn't respond. Instead, a red alert strobed across the control panel. External scramble detected. Countermeasure delayed. And behind him, the silence shifted. Rask turned slowly. To find Mabel standing at the base of the steps, holding the EMP spike in one gloved hand. She didn't smile. She didn't threaten. She simply said, "You pushed too far, Gareth's boy." Then she threw the spike. Flashpoint. The EMP spike detonated mid-air. There was no explosion. No flame. Just a sound. Like the whole world inhaling at once. Lights flickered. Metal groaned. The servers let out a high-pitched whine. And then... silence. Mabel turned and climbed the steps as Rask staggered back, clutching his head. His pupils dilated. He reached for a support beam. "You have no idea what you've done," he hissed. She paused at the top. "Oh, I do," she replied. "I ended your dress rehearsal." Network collapse. Back in room 209, Logan watched the simulation screen go dark. Every avatar froze. Then disintegrated into static. The map reset. The grid fell silent. Mabel's voice crackled through the audio line. "Node is offline. Command channel severed. Come home." Logan exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. He slipped the drive from the port and pocketed it. Mission complete. Or so he thought. The backup. That night, Mabel and Logan regrouped in room B. They watched the signal logs roll in, blank, empty, free of interference. Mabel leaned back in her chair, exhausted. "We did it." But just before midnight, a small chirp came from her secondary monitor. A single new line of code appeared. User, PR99. Query, initiate stage 2? Mabel's face drained of color. PR99. That's not Rask. Logan stepped forward. Then who? She stared at the screen, voice barely audible. That's Gurney. PR99. Mabel stared at the screen. PR99, initiate stage 2? The blinking cursor pulsed like a heartbeat. It's him, she whispered. Vice Principal Gurney. He's the failsafe. Logan's breath caught. But we shut the system down. You saw it, everything went dark. Mabel didn't blink. That was only the active node. But the signal architecture is decentralized. There's always a backup command source. Rask was the operator. And Gurney. She turned to him, face grave. Gurney's the switch. Redundancy protocol. Room B filled with the sound of frantic typing as Mabel pulled up archived Echo Division documents. She scrolled through page after page of redacted case files until she landed on one labeled Project, Fallback Signal, Neural Cascade Initiation, Stage 2. Underneath the header. In the event of operator incapacitation, the fallback agent, PR class, shall initiate Phase 2 under passive interface trigger. No remote confirmation required. Logan frowned. What's passive interface? It means he doesn't have to do anything, Mabel said. If the system senses the operator is offline, and the failsafe agent is in position, it auto-launches. Then he doesn't even know? She turned slowly. Maybe not. Or maybe he's known this whole time. Reassessment. They reloaded the thermal map. The shop? Cold. Offline. The school? Still glowing. Room 312, Mabel murmured. That's his office. Logan pointed to the screen. What's that next to it? A smaller signal flared, compact, intense. Server node, she said. It's been embedded in the AV junction box. Same tech I used for echo signals back in the 90s, but inverted. Inverted how? Instead of pulling data, it pushes. She zoomed in. Node active. Transmission set. Countdown, 12 hours 43 minutes and 18 seconds. Logan read the numbers. 12 hours? From now? She nodded. At exactly 7 a.m., every signal node in Elridge will go live again, this time under PR99's control. And there's no EMP that can stop it. A new threat. Logan paced the room. So what do we do? Mabel folded her hands. We find out what the second stage program contains. And we stop it from reaching the distribution point. Where's that? Her eyes didn't move from the screen. The water tower. Logan blinked. The water tower? Yes. The GhostNet doesn't just move through airwaves. It's begun experimenting with hydroconductive signal transfer. Water acts like a mirror, especially if enhanced with mineral additives. That's why the water tastes off lately, Logan muttered. Everyone's been saying it. It's not a taste, she replied. It's an echo. The plan. Mabel laid out their next move. Phase 1, infiltrate Elridge High that night, access room 312, and pull the server node from Gurney's office. Attempt to recover any command data before auto-initiation. Phase 2, sabotage the signal injectors inside the water tower before 7 a.m. Logan stared at her. And if we fail? She didn't answer immediately. Then, if we fail, everyone in town will act on someone else's thoughts. And no one will realize it. The unexpected visitor. As they packed gear into a duffel, headlamps, cutting tools, compact drives, Mabel's phone rang. She frowned. This line is dead. Only one number can ring it. She answered. Go. A voice replied, tinny and rushed, Mabel, it's Terry. From Relay Team 6. Logan looked up. We've got chatter. A car just crossed into Elridge using old division clearance. Plate matched a decommissioned asset designation, MI-21. Mabel's face froze. It's Barnes. Logan tilted his head. Who's Barnes? Mabel's voice was distant. Agent Barnes was my partner. We buried him in Berlin 12 years ago. The ghost returns. An hour later, Logan and Mabel sat across from the hardware store in the Buick, watching as a black Chrysler 300 idled quietly outside. A man stepped out. Tall, lean. Sharp suit. No coat, even in the chill. Mabel's breath fogged the windshield. That's him. Logan leaned forward. That's your partner? She nodded. He was burned alive in a warehouse during a breach. Or so we were told. The man crossed the street and walked toward the library. Straight toward them. Confrontation. He knocked once on the driver's side window. Mabel rolled it down halfway. Hello, Mabel, he said. His voice was calm. No accent. Crisp like cold metal. You're supposed to be dead, she replied. Barnes smiled faintly. Aren't we all, eventually? Logan bristled. Who are you? Barnes tilted his head. You must be the boy. The one she brought in. He turned back to Mabel. Rask failed. The system's unstable. That's why they sent me. Mabel narrowed her eyes. Stage 2? Barnes nodded. It doesn't matter what you severed. The fallback protocol is independent. The town will comply by dawn. He paused. Unless you give me the boy. The offer. Logan's heart stopped. What? Barnes ignored him. Give him to me. I'll trigger a fake failure in the secondary node. The town resets. You walk away. Mabel didn't flinch. And what do you do with him? Barnes offered a polite shrug. Nothing. He's a carrier now. His proximity to the system means he's broadcasting in background. I've been infected? Logan asked, voice trembling. Barnes smiled. You're a mirror, Logan. They want to use you to reflect the town's behavior back onto itself. Mabel reached down. Unclipped her holster. Barnes sighed. Don't do that. The warning. You said he was a mirror, Mabel replied. But the thing about mirrors? She drew the weapon. They reflect what's already broken. She fired. The window shattered. Barnes vanished. The aftermath. Logan ducked. Mabel. You. She threw the car into gear. We're out of time. If they've activated Barnes, then the system has gone rogue. It's not following commands anymore. Logan stared at her. You mean, it's running itself? She didn't look at him. She just drove. Toward the school. Toward the water tower. Toward the final hours before sunrise. And toward a future that might already be rewritten. The carrier. The Buick's engine growled beneath them as they sped through backstreets, tires hissing over wet pavement. Mabel's hands gripped the wheel like she was steering through time, not asphalt. Logan sat in silence, staring down at his palms. A mirror, Barnes had said. You're a mirror, Logan. He looked over at Mabel. Is it true? I'm broadcasting something? Mabel's jaw clenched. You're not infected, not in the way Barnes means. You're resonating. You've been inside every node now, school, library, reservoir. The signal has touched you too many times. And now what? You've become a tuning fork, she said. The net can use you to calibrate itself. Can I be shut off? She didn't answer. Surveillance in real time. They pulled off the main road and cut through the woods, taking a gravel path to a ridge that overlooked Elridge High. Below them, the school stood quiet, cloaked in blue-gray shadows under a sky churning with storm clouds. Mabel handed Logan a pair of high-powered binoculars. Third floor. Gurney's office. Tell me what you see. He focused the lens. The window was partially open. Inside, a computer screen glowed. Gurney sat at his desk, unmoving, facing the monitor. His body was too still. Not typing. Not reading. Just sitting. He's just staring, Logan muttered. Not blinking. That's the interface, Mabel said grimly. He's gone passive. The system's using him as a shell. What happens at 7 o'clock? She pulled a device from her pocket, small, rectangular, with a switch in the center. At 7 a.m., that shell will push a command through the water tower's mineral injectors. The town drinks it. Showers in it. Breathes it in the steam. And then? They forget who they are. Countdown. Mabel checked her watch. 4:27 a.m. 2.5 hours. She handed Logan a tactical flashlight and a small pouch. EMP flares, she explained. One burst every 6 seconds, enough to disable local electronics within a 10-foot radius. You'll need them when we split. Split? I hit the school. You hit the tower. They won't expect a dual breach. Logan's pulse quickened. I'm going alone? She fixed him with a steady gaze. They won't track you as fast. You're not on the registry. I am. He nodded, even as his stomach turned over. Meet me at the library once it's done, she said. If we're alive, he muttered. Her mouth twitched into the faintest smile. Optimism doesn't suit you. Entry point. They approached the school from the maintenance tunnel, the same one Logan had used before. This time, Mabel had updated the access code. It opened with a hiss of cold air and a click of metal. They paused at the tunnel's fork. Here, she said, handing him a radio. Go west through the woods. Enter the tower from the rear service door. Use this code. She scribbled a 6-digit number on his wrist with a marker. Don't get clever. Just plant the dampeners. Trigger the kill code. Then run. He nodded. They didn't hug. Didn't shake hands. She just said, see you on the other side. And vanished into the dark. The tower's heart. Logan reached the water tower at 5:02 a.m. He circled the fence. A single light above the service door blinked lazily, like an eye fighting sleep. He punched in the code. Access granted. Inside, the air was thick and metallic. Pipes hissed with pressure. The hum of circulating systems echoed through the chamber like a heartbeat. He moved quickly, placing the 3 EMP flares exactly where Mabel had instructed. One beneath the main control relay. One by the chemical dispersal module. One inside the valve cage beneath the filtration core. Each beeped twice as it activated. A small LED turned red. Armed. Now came the hard part, uploading the kill code to prevent automatic reactivation. He slid his flash drive into the console. The screen blinked. Unauthorized access detected. Neural mirror identified, PRMV alpha. What? Logan whispered. Then the screen changed. Welcome, Logan Price. Identity theft. Why does it know my name? He muttered. But the next message was worse. Mirror integrity stable. Neural clone ready. Stage 2 will continue via live interface. His voice trembled. No. No, no, no. He yanked the drive out, but the system kept running. Somehow, his presence had been enough to validate the network. He was the carrier. The backup plan. They didn't need Gurney. They had him. Override. Back at the school, Mabel moved silently through the second floor. She passed dark classrooms and abandoned lockers. The building smelled like dust and ozone. She reached Gurney's office and cracked the door open. He didn't move. But the moment she stepped inside, he spoke. Not to her. To the air. Command protocol complete. Proxy has accepted interface. Mabel froze. Proxy? Subject Logan Price. Her blood ran cold. Initiating memory overwrite of local population, Phase 1. She lunged toward the server. And it exploded in sparks. Escape. Logan slapped the emergency release on the tower door. The EMP flares began their countdown behind him. He sprinted into the trees as the first pulse detonated, dropping birds from branches, frying streetlights, and cracking the tower's glass instrumentation like eggshells. The second went off seconds later. By the time the third one fired, Logan was flat on his stomach behind a rock, panting hard. The tower lights went dark. But in his ear, Mabel's voice cracked through the radio. Abort mission. We have a problem. What? You've replaced the failsafe. They coded you in from the beginning. Silence. Then. Logan, they built this for you. The boy built for silence. The sky above Elridge cracked with thunder. Logan stumbled through wet branches, breathing hard, dirt streaked across his cheeks, radio hissing in his hand. Logan, they built this for you. Mabel's voice echoed inside his skull louder than the wind through the trees. Built this for me? He looked down at his hands. They trembled, not from cold, but recognition. Somewhere, deep inside, part of him already knew. The pattern. The dreams. The strange sensations when he walked under the power lines. The rhythmic pulsing he'd felt before the tower flared. He wasn't just involved. He was the design. Mabel's revelation. Logan finally emerged onto the main road, soaked and exhausted. Mabel's car skidded to a stop beside him, the passenger door flying open. He climbed in without speaking. She drove fast, expression unreadable. In room B, she handed him a towel and a cup of black tea. Neither helped. Tell me the truth, he said finally. All of it. She sighed. Sat down across from him. You weren't born in Elridge, were you? No, he muttered. We moved here when I was 2. Mom never talked about it. She couldn't. She didn't know the full story. She opened an old file from a locked cabinet. Project, Nestling Class, a mirror host/civilian integration initiative. His name was right there on the first page, Logan Price. Hidden history. Mabel's voice was low. Echo Division initiated Project Nestling during the final years of the Cold Signal War. The theory was simple: embed a child in a test community, expose them slowly to signal variations, and observe long-term neurobehavioral changes. You're saying I was an experiment? No, she said. You were a keystone. A prototype. She tapped the second page. They embedded neural markers into you at birth or shortly after. Passive, unintrusive. But they designed Elridge around you. Not the other way around. That's insane. Is it? She said. Why do you think the town's never changed? No new housing? No franchise restaurants? No tech beyond what's safe? Because Elridge isn't a town. She looked him dead in the eyes. It's a simulation with sidewalks. Rage. Logan shoved his chair back, nearly knocking it over. My mom, my friends, everything? They're just, what? Background noise? Lab rats? They're real people, she said, gently. But everything in their lives has been nudged. Jobs offered, decisions whispered, routines carefully steered. So that the signal could grow around you. He turned, paced to the wall, pressed his fists to the old wallpaper like he could punch through reality. And you knew? I suspected, she said. But I didn't confirm it until Barnes showed up. Until the net recognized your signature. He turned. Why didn't you tell me? Her eyes glistened. Because if you're a mirror, Logan, then I didn't want to crack you. A message from the past. She reached for the tape deck again, the one with his father's voice. There's a second tape, she said. Locked until activation protocol. She slid it into the recorder. Logan sat down, heart pounding. The tape clicked. Static hissed. Logan, if this is playing, then they've activated you. Son, I tried to bury you from this. I changed our names. I ran. But I couldn't outrun the net. No one can. You're not a weapon. You're a reflection. But that gives you power they can't predict. The spine was designed to follow logical command trees. But you? You feel. You adapt. And that's what makes you dangerous. Don't try to be like me. Just be real. That's how you beat a simulation. The tape clicked again. Then silence. Logan's resolve. He sat still for a long moment, hands clenched around the cup of tea. I don't know who I am, he whispered. You're the only thing they can't account for, Mabel said. Because you're not in the loop anymore. You've seen past the script. He looked up. What do we do? She smiled softly. We break the illusion. The final play. Mabel rolled out a new schematic of the town. This time, it wasn't heat maps or signal threads, it was infrastructure. Power lines. Water mains. Sewer paths. Underground cable clusters. The ghost net lives in the spaces we ignore, she explained. But if we short-circuit the right links at the right time, we create dissonance. Like, frying the system from the inside? Not just frying it, she said. Confusing it. Using me? Yes. You'll be the noise. I'll be the disruption. She pointed to 3 main nodes: library, water tower, and the school. You'll loop a false command through each hub, reflecting behavior patterns that contradict the simulation's predictions. Like, laughing when I should be afraid? Exactly, she said. We create chaos. The kind of chaos only humans can do. And the net can't handle that? It's designed for patterns. Not paradox. The risk. But what if it fights back? Logan asked. It will. What if I lose myself in it? She reached across the table and took his hand, warm, weathered, and shaking slightly. You hold on to one thing they'll never understand. What's that? She looked at him, eyes fierce. Choice. The spark begins. That night, Logan stood at the center of Main Street. Alone. The town was asleep. The sky buzzed with distant electricity. Streetlights flickered. The air carried a high-pitched tone like a whisper just out of earshot. He felt the signal inside him, pulling, vibrating. He stepped forward. Then another. Then, just to confuse it, he danced. Clumsily. Wildly. Like a fool. He shouted nonsense to the sky. He turned and skipped. He laughed for no reason. And then. The streetlights exploded. Signal collapse. In Room B, Mabel watched the GhostNet interface shatter. Prediction algorithms spiraled into red. Every loop broke. Gurney's office lights went black. The water tower groaned and steamed. The old hardware shop surged and burned from within. The net was trying to simulate behavior it couldn't compute. And Logan? Logan was improvising. He was human. And that was the one thing the system could never control. The algorithm breaks. Elridge didn't wake up screaming. It woke up confused. Streetlights blinked in Morse-like flashes. Car alarms whimpered, then stopped. Garage doors opened halfway, then reversed. Sprinklers came on during a misty dawn. Nothing crashed, nothing exploded, but everything was wrong in ways no one could quite name. And the people? They moved like actors stumbling off script. Hal at the diner forgot how to ring up an order. Mrs. Ramirez left her house still in slippers, wandering 3 blocks before realizing she wasn't holding her keys. The morning news didn't broadcast at all. And at exactly 7:03 a.m., a ripple passed through the town. Invisible. Electrical. And terrified. Room B, rewired. Mabel stood in Room B, surrounded by the hum of machines that now whined like wounded animals. The GhostNet's architecture had collapsed, but the echo of its design still lived in the circuits. Across the monitors, data flowed in from every node Logan had touched. Elridge High, loop nullified. Water tower, contaminant code corrupted. Hardware node, core burnout. And at the center of it all, highlighted in blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. Subject, Logan Price. Status, uncategorizable. Mabel allowed herself the faintest smile. He had done it. He'd broken the pattern. The aftershock. Logan walked down Main Street like a man waking from a dream he didn't know he was having. People stared at him, not out of fear, but recognition. Not just of who he was, but that he shouldn't be who he was. There was something in his eyes now. A frequency. A rhythm. Like standing next to a tuning fork that never stops ringing. He walked into the diner. Sat down at the counter. Hal looked at him, eyes dazed, and said, "You want coffee?" Logan blinked. "No. I want to see if you remember the last 7 minutes." Hal frowned. "What?" Logan smiled. "Exactly." Gurney's silence. Vice Principal Gurney was found in his office just before 8 a.m. Sitting upright, breathing shallow, eyes open but unresponsive. Paramedics said it looked like a seizure. Mabel knew better. She stood at the edge of the doorway as they wheeled him out, whispering to herself. He was a tether. Nothing more. When the EMTs passed her, one paused and said, "You know him?" She nodded. "He used to work for me." And she turned and walked away. The price of freedom. That afternoon, Logan sat in the library's back room with a stack of books he no longer had the heart to open. He felt different. Like his body belonged to him, but the signal, that residual hum, was still somewhere nearby, waiting to be reignited. "I can still feel it," he said softly. Mabel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You will. Maybe always. You're still part of it. But now it doesn't own you." He looked up. "So what now?" She stepped inside and dropped a thick envelope on the table. He opened it. Inside, coordinates. Names. Blueprints. "What is this?" She sat down. "It's happening in other towns. Mirror towns." Turns out Elridge wasn't the only simulation, Mabel said. Echo Division, before it broke apart, replicated the experiment in 4 other zones. One in Oregon. One in rural Georgia. One in South Dakota. And one, somewhere we still don't know. They built more people like me? Maybe. Maybe not. But they built more nets. Logan's fingers tightened around the envelope. "You want to go after them?" Mabel shook her head. "I'm too old. I'm staying here to make sure this town remembers who it is." She looked him dead in the eyes. "But you're the anomaly. The net can't read you. And that makes you the only one who can walk into a system and tear it down from inside." The mission. Logan stood, the weight of what she was saying pressing into his chest. "I don't know how." "You didn't know how to beat this town either," she said. "But you did." She handed him a coin, the same silver token she'd given him before, etched with the strange circle. "This is your compass now. It's not tech. It's memory. It only resonates when something's wrong." He turned it in his fingers. It was warm. The final conversation. That evening, as Logan stood by the front door of the library with a duffel over his shoulder, Mabel walked him out. "I was never meant to stay here this long," she said. "But I'm glad I did." "You never answered something," Logan said. "Why books? Why become a librarian?" She smiled. "Because books are the last place machines understand." And then she did something Logan never expected. She hugged him. Tight. Long. Like a mother saying goodbye to a son she never got to raise. Across the border. By the time Logan crossed the Elridge County line, the static had faded. His phone had no service. The coin in his pocket buzzed faintly once, then went silent. He didn't know what came next. But he knew this. The ghost net wasn't dead. It had simply lost control of its mirror. And now that mirror was walking straight into the dark. To find the next signal and break it, too. The second town. 3 weeks later. Rain hammered the roof of a bus bound for Calder's Edge, Oregon, a town nestled in a pine valley, the kind of place no one heard about unless they meant to. Logan sat near the back, hood up, earbuds in but no music playing. He wasn't listening for sound. He was listening for silence. For that odd stillness he now recognized. The unnatural quiet that came not from peace, but from programming. The kind of quiet that sat like a held breath across a town pretending it had nothing to hide. The same quiet that had blanketed Elridge. And now it was here. Arrival. Calder's Edge looked normal. Too normal. Gas station. Bakery. A courthouse that doubled as a library. Teenagers on bikes. Hand-painted shop local signs taped to dusty windows. Logan stepped off the bus and took a long breath. Immediately, the coin in his pocket vibrated. Not much. Just a single pulse. But enough. It had found the signal. Again. The town that sleeps too well. Logan checked into a motel that felt preserved in amber, no computer systems, no magnetic keycards, just a brass skeleton key and a landline phone on the nightstand. The woman at the front desk smiled too politely. Most people come here to fish or to forget, she said. I'm just passing through. Everyone says that. Logan nodded. Then locked his door tight. Initial recon. That evening, he walked the perimeter of Calder's Edge. The library courthouse hybrid was the first place he checked, small, worn, and surrounded by pine. Inside, the lights were motion sensitive. The shelves held legal codes and local history books in perfect alphabetical order. Too perfect. Every spine lined up. Every book untouched. The air smelled like fresh varnish, despite no one entering before him. The librarian looked up from her desk as he entered. Elderly. Neatly dressed. Too neatly. Help you? She asked. Logan looked at the sign behind her. Quiet is our greatest freedom. He raised an eyebrow. Just browsing. She watched him for too long before nodding. The signal. That night, he took out the device Mabel had given him, a pulse scanner built to detect low-bandwidth neural syncs. He ran it across the window, then across the motel walls. Static. Clean. But when he moved to the bathroom mirror, the scanner beeped. Faint, irregular. He blinked. He ran it again. Another ping, small but definite, just behind the glass. He removed the mirror from the wall. Behind it? A tiny ceramic disc, barely the size of a quarter, embedded in the drywall. He froze. Then carefully pried it out and placed it in foil. The coin buzzed twice. Got you, he whispered. Contact. At 2:17 a.m., his burner phone vibrated. Unfamiliar number. Area code from Nevada. He answered. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice, slow, familiar in tone. Mabel said you'd come. He straightened. Who is this? Her name was on the emergency contact list. I saw your file before it disappeared. You're in danger. And so is everyone here. Logan swallowed. Who are you? Someone who helped build the mirrors. And now, someone trying to break them. Then the line cut. Ghost school. The next day, Logan walked past Calder's Edge Middle School. It was eerily quiet for 3:30 p.m. No buses. No kids. But the lights were on. He slipped around the side of the building and spotted two large HVAC units wired with coiled copper, far beyond what a standard ventilation system needed. "Signal amplifiers," he whispered. Then he saw the emergency shelter sign posted on the gym wall. And beneath it, faded with time. "Authorized for deep drill compliance. DOE approval, Class 2. He froze. Deep drill. It was the name on a file Mabel had shown him, a secondary project under Echo Division, rumored to be worse than the net. More than behavior monitoring. Behavior scripting. The pattern returns. That night, Logan wrote out the behaviors he'd seen in the town so far. No one talks loudly. No one wears headphones. Cars do not honk. No animals bark at night. Lights never flicker. Everyone sleeps by 9:30 p.m. The silence wasn't just environmental. It was enforced. Just like in Elridge, but more advanced. No anomalies. No noise. No variance. Which meant he had one job. The disruption. At 9:32 p.m., Logan walked the quiet streets in a hoodie with a Bluetooth speaker in his bag. He stood in the center of the town square. Took a deep breath. Then hit play. Punk rock. Loud. Unapologetic. Chaotic. Guitars screamed through the silence. Lights in nearby windows snapped on. Dogs began barking in the distance. A child cried. Someone shouted, "Turn that down." Not angrily, but like their own voice startled them. Then the town's power grid pulsed. Logan's coin vibrated violently. He smiled. They were listening. He had their attention. The girl in the static. The next morning, Calder's Edge was quieter than usual. Not just in sound, but in mood, like something sacred had been violated. Like the town was grieving. Logan walked into the diner at 7:06 a.m. No one greeted him. The usual murmurs of conversation were gone. Every head turned slightly as he passed, but no one said a word. A song had been played. And the net had heard it. Reaction protocol. Logan stirred his coffee, eyes fixed on the reflection in the spoon. Behind him, the waitress typed something on a tablet she hadn't used the day before. Digital menus. New system, he asked casually. She blinked. It arrived this morning. You sure it wasn't there yesterday? She paused, just a blink of confusion, but nodded anyway. Been here all along. No. Logan knew better. The net was retaliating. Adapting. Accelerating its presence through scripting reinforcement, rewriting memories, installing tech under the illusion of permanence. It was beginning to run in real time. And that meant his window to shut it down was closing. The message. Back in the motel room, Logan examined the ceramic disc he had extracted from the bathroom mirror. Using a frequency scanner, he isolated a low pulse, the same as Elridge's net, but layered with foreign data clusters. He ran the waveform through Mabel's cracked decryption app. The readout displayed one line of text. Mirror 02 status, active host unstable. Initiate proxy stabilization, asset LC37 inch. He frowned. LC37. A file name? A person? He cross-referenced it against the backup data Mabel had given him. Only one match. Lucy Carter, age 17. Student, Calder's Edge Middle School. Behavioral notes, repetitive speech, sensitivity to noise, irregular dream reporting. LC37 wasn't a file. She was a girl. And the system had marked her unstable. The outlier. Logan spent the afternoon tracing Lucy's school records, which had been quietly made public through a parental information portal. There was only one comment in the most recent update. Refused silence drills. Observed speaking during blackout. Behavior flagged for recalibration. He swallowed hard. This wasn't just a simulation. It was a correctional grid. And Lucy had become its next target. Finding Lucy. It took him until evening to find the house, a white cottage near the edge of town, sagging with the weight of too many winters. He knocked twice. No answer. He knocked again. This time louder. A moment passed. Then the door creaked open. Lucy stood there. Thin, dark-haired, in an oversized hoodie. Her eyes darted quickly behind him, then back again. "You're not from here," she said. "No," Logan replied. "But you aren't either." "Not really." She stared at him. Then stepped aside and let him in. A room full of noise. Her room was chaos. Books scattered on the floor. Blankets hanging from the ceiling. Music posters taped upside down. A lava lamp flickered beside a speaker that emitted soft static. "Helps me think," she said, nodding toward it. Logan sat on the edge of a beanbag. "Do you know what they're doing?" She shrugged. "They want everyone the same." "I'm not." "You felt it?" "In my dreams." "I see it. The town changes just a little every time I wake up." The clock's 5 minutes later. My mom's shirt has one less button. But no one remembers. He leaned forward. "Lucy, they flagged you. They're going to try and overwrite you." She gave a half smile. "They already tried." Logan stared. "They used to bring in these guidance visitors," she said. "Men in gray suits. Said they were mental health counselors. But they just asked questions. Tried to get me to tell them what I dreamt. And I lied," she said, proud. "Every time." The catalyst. Logan explained everything: Elridge, the ghost net, the mirrors. Lucy didn't flinch. Instead, she stood and opened her closet. Inside, pinned to the wall, were pages torn from notebooks. Pages filled with scribbles, drawings, and numbers. Dates. Sequences. "I kept track," she said. "Every loop. Every change." She pulled one page down. "Tomorrow, they'll run the trigger. Same as your town. They do it at the edge of the new moon. Best time for resets." Logan stared at the note. 7:03 a.m. Same pattern. Same plan. Only this time, he wasn't the only anomaly. He had help. Preparing the strike. That night, they snuck into the Calder's Edge Rec Center, an old gym now used only for town hall meetings and enrichment seminars. Lucy showed him the room where it happened. "We sit in circles. They play music through the floor. It makes people forget things. But I fake it." The floor panels were thick. Underneath, Logan found them. Signal mats. Lined with copper and ceramic mesh. Exactly like the early neural architecture of the ghost net. Lucy helped him plant pulse dampeners, devices designed to reverse the flow of signal. Instead of receiving instructions, it would broadcast confusion. "If we reverse it," Logan said, "we don't just block the signal, we send it back garbled. They'll choke on their own data." Lucy smiled. "Chaos. That's my favorite subject." The loop breaker. Just before dawn, they returned to the square. No one else was awake. The lights buzzed gently. The town held its breath. Logan turned to Lucy. "You sure you want to do this?" She nodded. "They tried to erase me. Time to erase them." He handed her the control for the dampeners. They stood there, side by side, as the sky turned pale blue. And when the church bell rang for 7 a.m., they pressed the button together. The feedback pulse. 7:03 a.m. The moment the church bell's final chime faded into the cold air of Calder's Edge, Logan and Lucy pressed the button. A low, almost imperceptible hum rose from beneath their feet. Not violent. Not loud. But wrong. It was the sound of the system hearing something it didn't recognize. The pulse dampeners activated in perfect sequence, broadcasting a reversed, corrupted signal straight through the copper-laced foundations of the town up into the rec center, the library courthouse, the water systems, and the school. The ghost net had spent years scripting behavior, mapping outcomes, rehearsing decisions. Now, it was being fed its own voice, scrambled, mirrored, broken. The silence cracked. System shock. Across Calder's Edge, things began to unravel. Alarm clocks beeped backward, emitting tones that made ears ring. Streetlights blinked white instead of yellow or red. Vending machines released snacks on their own, without prompting. Phones rang with no caller ID, only silence on the other end. People stopped in their tracks. Looked around. And for the first time in decades, you could see it. Awareness. The fog was lifting. Minds long dulled by subtle programming now jerked into micro-awareness, confused but blinking, like eyes adjusting to light after a long dark. Lucy's moment. Inside the rec center, the floor panels began to shake. Lucy stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching it all burn beautifully. Their algorithm relies on obedience, she said, voice steady. But humans are made to resist. Logan looked at her. You really were never going to follow the script, were you? Nope. From her pocket, she pulled out a black crystal drive, a second pulse, one Mabel had told Logan to use if the first failed. He hadn't needed it. But Lucy? She built her own. This one's mine, she said. And she slammed it into the auxiliary port beneath the gym's podium. Full reversal. With a single spark, everything changed. The backup signal, Lucy's signal, activated. It didn't just jam the ghost net. It rewrote it. Every node in town, every mirrored command tree, every forced loop, it all began to collapse in on itself like a house of cards flipped upside down. Screens flashed error codes. Lights buzzed and died. Somewhere beneath the town, a failsafe tried to activate. And failed. Because there was no longer a command path to follow. The source of unpredictability, the mirror, had become the author. Waking up. By 8 a.m., Calder's Edge felt different. Not frantic. Not chaotic. Just alive. People spoke louder. Children ran in the streets. A car honked, and no one flinched. A woman laughed in the bakery, a big, belly-deep laugh that made Logan turn and smile. Lucy stood beside him, watching it all like someone who'd survived a storm. You feel that? Logan asked. She nodded. That's what real silence sounds like, she said. Why? Because no one's controlling it anymore. Clean up. Back in the motel room, they collected what tech remained. Most of it was fried. Irrelevant now. Logan sat at the table and scribbled a short note on the motel stationery. Calder's Edge, reset successful. Mirror LC-37 fully activated. Behavior stable. Community baseline restored. Signal node dismantled. LP. He tucked the note into his backpack beside the old coin and the empty pulse dampeners. Another town. Another mirror shattered. Goodbyes. Outside, Lucy leaned against a lamppost, backpack over one shoulder. You're leaving, huh? She said without turning around. I have to, Logan replied. There are more towns. More nets. She glanced at him. You sure you're not part machine? He smirked. Getting less sure every day. She stepped forward and pressed something into his hand. It was a zip drive. I recorded their failover code before we fried it. Thought you might want it. He stared at her. You could have left. You didn't. They shared a long look, two strangers wired the same way in a world too quiet for truth. Then she turned and walked toward her house, hoodie pulled up, unafraid of the noise. The letter. Later that night, Logan checked into a diner 2 towns over, ordered a black coffee, and pulled out the encrypted sat phone Mabel had given him. He dialed. It rang once. Twice. Then her voice. You made it. Calder's edge is clean, he said. The net's gone. Lucy? She's fine. She's better than fine. And you? He hesitated. I'm starting to forget what it felt like before. That's the cost of being awake. He nodded. Mabel, he said quietly. What if I run into a town where the mirror wants to be used? Her voice was calm. Then you remind them what it feels like to be free. The Signal Hunter. 3 days later. Logan crossed into Abbott's Reach, South Dakota, a town not marked on most GPS maps, though its streets were perfectly paved, its streetlights evenly spaced, and its people, a little too content. He'd learned by now that serenity often meant sedation. At a local cafe, he ordered tea. Not coffee. The barista blinked, stunned like no one had asked that before. Are you from around here? She asked, smiling mechanically. No, Logan said. But I've seen this before. He tapped the edge of the table with a coin. The coin. No vibration. Not yet. But he could feel it. The net was buried deeper this time. It had learned. The pattern variance. In Room B back in Elridge, Mabel had once told him, they'll stop simulating you. They'll start building towns around people like you. Abbott's Reach wasn't passive like Elridge, or reactive like Calder's Edge. It was preemptive. It knew how to defend itself. Within hours of Logan's arrival, the town began to shift. The weather app on his burner phone began updating with real-time information, despite no signal or data. The bus schedule changed by 5 minutes, just enough to delay him. A woman at the post office asked him for his name twice, then called him by it before he ever gave it. The town was reading him. Not waiting. Responding. And that was dangerous. The museum. Logan followed a thread of rumors to the Abbott Heritage Museum, a squat concrete building run by docents who wore name tags but no names. Inside, an entire wing was dedicated to the history of local decision-making. Photos of town meetings, ballots, civic service projects, dozens of images showing faces looking almost familiar. He blinked. In the background of one image, a boy who looked exactly like him. Same build. Same jawline. Just younger. He leaned closer. The caption read, Civic Science Project, Predictive Civic Engagement Model, 1997 Trial. His stomach turned. He wasn't the first. Archives below. After closing, he snuck back in through the utility entrance. The basement archive smelled of paper and wet stone. There, behind stacks of census reports and population surveys, he found a file drawer labeled Behavioral Divergence Index, Tier 3. Inside, sealed packets. One was labeled, Price, L, Potential Variance/Disruptive Mirror. He read through it in silence. Birth records. Neural resonance scans. An echo division stamp marked in red. Project Cantor. He'd heard that name once, from Mabel, long ago. A ghost file. Rumored to be a final experiment. Not a simulation. A trap. The town's defense. As Logan emerged onto the street, sirens lit up, not loud, but synchronized. Quiet beacons. A police cruiser idled near the curb, though no officer emerged. In a window above, an old man stared at him blankly. The people here weren't under control. They were complicit. That was the difference. The ghost net had stopped mimicking life. Now it used it. Unexpected help. At 1:17 a.m., as he crouched beneath the church's bell tower, trying to map the signal strength coming off the copper cross overhead, a hand landed on his shoulder. He spun, ready to fight. But a voice whispered, "Don't. You'll wake them." The figure stepped back, hooded, face obscured. Then she pulled it down. It was Lucy. "What? How did you?" "I followed the net's broadcast signature," she said. "You triggered it again. I felt it in my dreams. It's stronger here. You shouldn't be here." She smirked. "That's what makes me useful." The plan repeats. They huddled beneath the tower and unrolled the schematic Logan had stolen from the museum archives. It confirmed what he feared. The town's church bell was a resonator equipped with a deep metal pulse ring that sent a neural pattern with every chime. Twice a day. 7 a.m. 7 p.m. Every tone embedded a soft directive. Smile. Sleep. Forget. And the people? They weren't resisting anymore. They had accepted it. The infection of choice. "This place is worse than the last two," Lucy whispered. Logan nodded. "Because here, they think they're free." She stared at the copper wiring coiled around the bell's base. "Can we break it?" "No." He pulled out a different device. "But we can make it lie." Inversion. They climbed the tower at 6:42 a.m. Below them, the town moved like a symphony, lights flicked on, sprinklers activated in sequence, a mail truck started without a driver visible. Logan pulled out the resonance disruptor Mabel had developed, the final tool, a one-use device meant to hijack a sound-based signal and invert its meaning. He set it beside the striker inside the bell. Lucy watched the timer. 6:59. "Once it rings, we go," Logan said. She held up a small mic receiver. "You sure it'll translate?" "It'll speak confusion," he said. "And the system can't handle confusion." The bell lifted. The striker swung. And at 7 hours and 1 second, the copper sang. Backwards. And then. People stumbled. Doors opened and stayed open. Digital signs flashed random strings of text. Someone screamed, not in fear, but in recognition. Logan watched as the town's scripting framework collapsed like a deck of soaked cards. Lucy whispered, "You did it." "No," Logan said. "We did it." The town that remembered. 7:03 a.m. For the first time in years, Abbott's Reach fell silent for the right reasons. No instructions pulsed through the bell tower. No subliminal cues filtered into nervous systems. The people walked outside, blinking at the morning light like they were seeing their town for the first time, not a version of it written for them, but the raw, imperfect, real thing. One child cried. A man threw his phone into the street. A woman collapsed into laughter without knowing why. It wasn't chaos. It was release. And from the top of the tower, Logan and Lucy watched the unprogrammed world wake up. The cleanup. They moved quickly. Lucy carried the disruptor, now drained of energy, like a relic. Logan returned to the museum and copied every file tied to Project Cantor, extracting names, dates, and locations. There were 4 more towns listed. None of them had names. Only designations. CN1 through CN4. Calder's Edge, he realized, had been CN2. Abbott's Reach was CN3. And if his guess was right, Elridge wasn't even on the list. It was the prototype. Echoes. In a narrow cafe booth near the edge of town, they reviewed the data. Logan scanned the personnel records and stopped when he saw something that made his stomach twist. Michael Price. Deceased. Former designation, CN1 architect. His father. Mabel had said he ran. He hadn't. He built it first. Lucy sat across from him, watching his face. What is it? He helped create this. My dad. He swallowed. Then he tried to destroy it. Sounds like you. Except he failed. She leaned closer. You haven't. Directive from Mabel. Later that night, a secure message hit Logan's encrypted phone. From Redroot, Mabel's ghost line. I tracked CN1's last known sink. Nevada desert. Town with no name. There's no entry. No exit. Just repetition. If you go there, take someone who doesn't believe in fate. Below it, a map fragment, coordinates that led to nowhere. Logan looked at Lucy. I know where we're going. The road to CN1. By dawn, they were on the road again. A battered Jeep stolen from an unlocked garage took them through open fields and past forgotten gas stations. The world felt bigger now. Wilder. Not freer yet, but unstuck. Logan stared out the window, thinking about how many more versions of himself might have existed in other mirrors. People designed to feel real but never be whole. Lucy noticed his silence. You okay? I don't know if this ends, he said. Or if I just become part of something worse. She reached into her jacket and handed him a folded piece of paper. A letter. In Mabel's handwriting. Mabel's last letter. Logan. You were never just a disruption. You were the conclusion to a sentence no one finished writing. What they built, these towns, these nets, they aren't just about control. They're about erasing what makes us change. But you? You adapted. You felt. You asked questions. That's the only real firewall left. So keep asking. Keep walking. And when you reach the final mirror, shatter it without regret. You're not the echo, Logan. You're the signal. M. Ghost town ahead. As the sun dipped low on the horizon, they reached a road that wasn't on the map. Dust swallowed their headlights. The Jeep's GPS froze. Radio crackled with a sound like whispering inside a concrete wall. Then the sign appeared. Just a single wooden post. Weather-beaten. Barely legible. CN1. No town name. Just a number. Beyond it, flickering lights, looping shadows, a gas station where the same man filled the same tank every 20 minutes. A child walked in circles. A street lamp turned on, then off, then on. And at the center, a white building with no doors. Lucy looked at him. You ready? Logan gripped the coin in his palm. No. He smiled faintly. But I'm going anyway. The first mirror. The road ended at a gate with no lock. Behind it stretched a ghost town, identical houses, spaced too evenly. A diner with no cars. A church with no steeple. And at the center, that white building, plain, flat-roofed, surrounded by security cameras that didn't move. The air was thick. Dry. Still. CN1. The first test. The original mirror. Where it all began. Logan stepped out of the Jeep and felt it immediately, like walking into a room that remembered him even though he'd never been there. Lucy followed, voice hushed. It's not just empty. It's looping. And it was. A newspaper blew across the same street twice. A door opened. Closed. Opened again. The town was alive. But only inside the program. The faces of the forgotten. They walked quietly down a street labeled Prospect Lane. Every house had lights on. Every window had faces behind the glass. Identical expressions. Calm. Blank. Watching. They didn't blink. Those aren't people, Logan whispered. No, Lucy said. They're fragments. Simulated residents, part of an unfinished behavioral archive. Not alive. Not dead. Just waiting. And at the center of it all, the white building. Not a courthouse. Not a lab. Just a structure built from absence, no doors, no windows, only a seam in the wall. Lucy stepped forward and touched it. It opened. Inside the seam. They walked into darkness. No switches. No light sources. But somehow, they could see. The interior stretched too far, like the dimensions bent around them. In the center, a chair. A console. And a screen displaying a single line. Welcome back, Logan Price. He froze. Lucy stepped beside him. The console lit up, and suddenly it began replaying moments from Elridge. Logan's first time in Room B. Mabel's quiet command, Code Black. His dance in the street that shattered the spine. Then came things he'd never seen. Lucy being flagged at school. Mabel arguing with the man in Shadow's barns. His father, Michael, holding an infant Logan as a voice whispered. The mirror must be human. Or they won't believe it's real. The real plan. A door appeared in the wall. Not mechanical, rendered. A digital permission gate. It opened. Beyond it, a cold chamber lined with memory drives. On each, Logan Price Instance A. Instance B. Instance C. Instance J. Lucy's breath caught. They've restarted you. He staggered back. 10 versions. 10 lives. Some never made it past childhood. Some collapsed at adolescence. Some, like him, reached the mirror stage. This isn't just a simulation, Lucy whispered. It's a filter. They've been testing who you become, over and over. He turned to her. Which means I was never the first. She reached out and touched his arm. No. But you're the one who made it here. Burn it all. Logan walked to the central console. It pulsed under his fingers, warm and familiar. A voice crackled through the static above. This is not failure. This is refinement. You are data. Your resistance is progression. He looked up. No, he said. My resistance is choice. He inserted Mabel's final crystal. The override screen blinked. Confirm, delete Project CN1 architecture. All data will be lost. All instances will be released. Proceed? Lucy whispered, you don't have to. Logan stared at the screen. Then pressed yes. Collapse. The town outside flickered. Windows blinked out. The streetlights snapped like cold bones. One by one, the simulated faces dissolved into white mist. Even the roads began to fade. The code was dying. And as the structure cracked around them, Lucy grabbed Logan's hand. Time to go, she said. They ran. Escape. The jeep roared to life just as the outer walls of CN1 crumbled behind them like sandcastles in the wind. No alarms. No explosions. Just vanishing. By the time they reached the ridge overlooking the valley, the town was gone. Nothing but dirt and empty space. No buildings. No signs. No trace. CN1 had never existed. except in them. Aftermath. That night, they sat by a campfire 30 miles from the Nevada border. Lucy turned the coin over in her hand. It's quiet. Good, Logan said. He held up the crystal, now dead, scorched on the edges. Mabel said there were 4. Lucy shook her head. No. There were always 5. He frowned. Elridge, Calder's Edge, Abbott's Reach, CN1, what's the 5th? She looked at him. Then tapped his chest. You. The signal ends. Dawn came slow. Logan sat alone on a ridge of red stone, watching the first light hit the empty valley where CN1 had once stood. There was nothing now. Not a single beam or footprint. Just sand, and silence, and sky. And yet, he remembered. Every loop. Every loss. Every choice. Behind him, Lucy slept under a blanket near the smoldering embers of their fire, one arm curled around the silver-edged coin. The coin hadn't pulsed all night. The signal was gone. But Logan wasn't sure if that meant they had one. Or if they were just alone now. One final file. At sunrise, Logan turned on the crystal drive one last time. It barely responded. Burned from the inside, the casing hissed softly in the cool morning air. Still, one file opened. A message. Audio only. Mabel's voice. If you're hearing this, Logan, you erased the mirror. And you walked out with your mind still yours. That's more than I did. You'll want to know if it's over. It's not. Because the signal was never the enemy. The desire to be controlled, to let go of hard choices, to let someone else decide who we are, that's what built these towns. The systems are gone. But that part? It lives in people. That's your real fight now. The quiet war. He and Lucy spent one last night together at the edge of the desert. No more missions. No blueprints. No names in red folders. Just stars. And fire. And the long, slow rhythm of people beginning again. She traced circles in the dirt beside him and whispered, what if there are other mirrors? Ones not made by Echo Division. Just human ones. He nodded. There are. She met his eyes. Then what do we do? He smiled. We teach people to break their own reflections. Letters from the road. Over the next year, Logan moved silently from place to place. Sometimes Lucy was with him. Sometimes not. He helped a teacher in Kansas rediscover her memory after years of government-prescribed focus therapy. He shut down a tech startup in Montana that was unknowingly beta testing emotional scripting apps. He whispered truth into the ears of strangers who felt broken and didn't know why. And in each place, he left a small item behind. A page torn from a banned book. A photograph of someone mid-laughter. A silver coin with no markings. Each object was a message. You're still real. A visit to Elridge. One cold spring evening, he returned to Elridge. Room B had been sealed. The library was now a youth center, run by a kind woman with a voice like wind chimes. No one remembered Mabel. But Logan did. He left a single item in the back of the room, beneath the shelf marked Historical Fiction. A cassette. And a note. If you ever start dreaming about silence, press play. Then he walked away without looking back. Legacy. Years passed. Some forgot. Some woke up. And somewhere, beneath the noise of daily life, a hum returned, not one of control, but of intention. People made strange choices again. Spoke their minds. Walked off the expected path. And in certain cities, a whisper spread. If the world feels too quiet, find the librarian. She never had a name. But she always left the same message. You're not the echo. You're the signal. The final scene. Logan stood at the edge of a coastal town now, one without history, one freshly built by hands, not code. Children laughed. A radio played jazz too loud. A cat yowled on a rooftop. And someone shouted his name, not a code, not a designation, but his name. He turned. Lucy smiled. Still think the war's over? She asked. He shook his head. Not even close. Then took her hand. And walked into the noise. Alive, awake, and finally free.